Okay, we're moving forward with our Baroque session and just have a quick review of the Baroque art before we get into Artemisia Gentileschi. But Baroque art is emerges in the late 16th century in Italy, in Rome, Florence, and spread across Europe in the 17th century, which we can talk about it later in Spain, for example, and France. It grew and Northern European, and it grew out of religious conflict, court culture, and scientific curiosity, and new demands on images after the Reformation and Counter-Reformation. Right? The church is in need of visual excitement to convert or convince people to believe in Roman Catholics. So they feel the need to dramatize the visual material, the visual elements to tell, to convey the story, the biblical, a lot of time, biblical stories to the spectators, most of whom are illiterate at the time. And Baroque art wants to move the viewer, right? So to persuade, to overwhelm, object falling into your picture playing, figures in the pictures to involve you, to try to drag you into the painting, into the scene, and force you to even participate, to experience and feel what they feel in the picture, in the scene. And also this is a way to make sacred or historical scenes feel present to you, like Caravaggio's, right? Using naturalism, natural, realistic object, people, even real life model so that it doesn't look so that it feels like that's something happening right in front of your eyes that's right in your life in the society that you're living in all the people in the scene they are contemporaries of the the viewer. And today we're going to get to another Baroque artist who's also a follower of Caravaggio, Artemisia Gentileschi. Artemisia belongs to the world of immediacy, pressure, and emotional impact, just like Caravaggio, but of course different. And we're going to show you how. So, a little bit of a crash course on the Baroque, right? Since we've gone this far. For example, we have the diagonal compositions rather than a calm symmetry that Renaissance artists would promote a strong contrast of light and dark to dramatize the story to guide your attention to certain areas, right? And for the areas that's really dark, there's no way that you can pay your attention to those areas, right? It's that spotlight that cast on that certain area that the artist really wants you to see. So visual manipulation as a way of storytelling just like writing a fiction you would do with text, with writing, but here you do with the brushstrokes, with the composition, with painting, all the tools that get involved in painting. And some other ways to dramatize the story. How about bodies caught in mid-action? The body's always in a movement that you feel the vibe right there. It's just right caught in the middle of a movement of emotion. It's not as calm. It's always moving, if not swirling, like my background, right? The scene, all the swirling bodies twerking, and heightened emotion to and theatrical storytelling, rich texture, skin, fabric, metal, blood, stone, different kind of material to show you not just skill, not just the technique of the artist of the artist, but as a way to offer a presumptuous uh, offer a very grandiose feeling, a royal feeling, a sense, and also a sense that viewers pull into the event, as we just talked about. So Artemisia definitely inherited some of this Baroque visual language, right? And how, but how does she incorporate it into her own transformation? That's a key. That's a key that we want to figure out today. And this is one of the self-portrait of Artemisia Gentileschi, and she's done a lot of self-portraits uh, too. But why? Why why does she want to draw herself? Because usually for a painter, right, at the time, artists, you work for patrons, you sign contract with patrons. That's how you survive. That's how you make a living. But doing a portrait of your own self, right, self-portrait, well, it doesn't, it couldn't materialize first of all, and you couldn't sell to any patrons. You should keep it to yourself. But how come Artemisia is still producing so many self-portraits? That's one of the topic of our lecture today. And so for this lecture, we're going to talk about a couple main things, a little bit of the early of Artemisia's career, because this is the first female artist what we that we encounter so far in this course. A little bit about her life, and then, of course, about her works, and a close reading of the Judith and Holofernes painting, and a little bit of the trial that she got involved. Uh, yeah, as a female artist, there might be some kind of hardship we get to. And this line is from his one of her letters. She's written a lot of letters to some to many of which to a lot of famous artists at the time and even scientists at the time. For example, Galileo, uh, uh, the scientist, the astrologist Galileo, who we're gonna get to. They had an interesting friendship that had a very a great impact on Artemisia Gentileschi. Gonna get to that later. Okay. So what's that connection, right? We're talking about Artemisia, this female artists in the Baroque art. What's a relation? What's a connection between the two? Well, Artemisia's artwork, as you will see later, right? The high contrast light, the compressed action, push all the figures being pushed into one focal point to use like, oh, that kind of intensity, doubled intensity in bodies under pressure at the time in caught in the movement, but also under pressure, tweaking of kind of a contrapposal movement gets involved in helping to tell the story. Uh, and she's very rarely got to be able to become, even though it's been through a very arduous journey, to become a professional artist. A female professional artist at the time was, if you like, unheard of. And she's able to work for elite patrons, ran a workshop herself. All workshops are male dominated, and even had the opportunity, even able to join the Florence's Academia in 1616, which is recognized by by the society, by the community, by the male-dominated world to be accepted as a professional artist. So these might seem pretty, to an extent, if you don't mind, mediocre, right? To us, content for us in our society. Yeah, sure, we have a lot of female artists, right? But at the time, it was a breaking of the ceiling. It was a milestone for female artists at the time. Subject matters. She's able to paint all the subject matters. So so other artists do that as well. Well, also as a female artist, they don't get to they don't get to be paid paying all this biblical stories, for example, martyrs or allegories. Uh, even painting women shown as thinking and acting objects as very more proactive figure in the painting. No, women artists, well, first of all, it's really hard for them to become an artist and to be recognized as an artist is there's no way almost. And also but for the women, if they really want to participate in art creation, maybe they will do some kind of genre painting instead, but not get into all this mainstream topics, mainstream subject matters. What do I mean by the genre paintings? For example, like the still life, like paint, like landscape, well, that doesn't involve so much of the mainstream stuff like allegory or biblical stories that the patrons really care, you're okay. The society wouldn't press you so much. The male-dominated world wouldn't criticize you too much. Would just let you do your thing. So that's the circumstance for female working in the art industry at the time. Okay, but the Artemisia's changed a little bit of this. So, well, you already kind of have a sense that I'm introducing some of the feminist perspectives to you in art history. And in fact, feminist globalism, colonialism, or decolonialism, all these topics are very kind of like trendy in the recent 1 decade in art history that gets to be talked a lot about. Okay. Early life, born in Rome in the late 16th century. Uh, a daughter of a painter, Orazio Gentileschi, and that's how, right? That's how she got the opportunity to be trained, to have a formal training in art, in painting, in art, uh, because she can work in from the family, work for her father's studio as a way to learn, to train, whereas other female artists wouldn't get this opportunities like this. She learned in a workshop rather than in an academy. And this is her father's workshop, and this matters in culture that restricted women's training. Right? Academy, women's are not off limit. Her earliest dated work is 1610, showing precocious technical control before she was 20. She was just pretty a genius already, like very sophisticated in her brushstroke at the very young age, just like the prodigy Michelangelo. I don't know if you remember Michelangelo's Pietà in St. Peter's Basilica, right? The Pietà, Michelangelo carved the Pietà when he was like 19 years old. It's already gaining fame at the time. Well, Artemisia's shown her talent at early in her life. And because of her father's heavily influenced by Caravaggio, so Caravaggism shaped her from the start. So you will see a lot of the strong chiaroscuro, the tenebrism, right? The uh, Caravaggio's way of chiaroscuro, the light and dark contrast is tenebrism and close-up action and the naturalistic bodies using live models. Artemisia Gentileschi used all of that. How about a quick taste of her work first? This is one of her early artwork when painted when she was only 17. And just focus on this one first. This is I'm gonna refer to this one later. Both of women in nude, right? Because at the time, remember Renaissance, from Renaissance to Baroque art, the female figures a lot of time in the picture and the scene were uh, made or created for the consumption of male gazes because it's such a male-dominated society at the time. So it's for male gazes. So, for example, in Titian's painting, the Venus of Urbino, Titian make the Venus, this female body, first of all, almost abstract you, almost put at the edge of the picture plane, and twist, turn towards you. So the counter posture, the contrapostal movement, turning of the body is really catering to the male gaze, to turn the female's face and body to face the audience at the time was mainly, primarily males, right? But Artemisia Gentileschi's turning still, doing the contrapposto a little bit, and with this female in nude, her turning of the body is towards the background or the interlocutor right next to her, turning away from the viewer. First of all, it's not for the audience enjoyment, but she's engaging in conversation, right? Engaging in conversation. That's important for me to share because that shows some kind of claim reclamation of the female's self-identity. That I am that this male figure, right? Susanna. So we're still doing the biblical story, but Susanna is presented differently, presented as someone that has her own thought, right? As a human being, as some kind of individual. So unlike many male treatments, this is Titian's very famous male treatment, Venus of Urbino. Susanna reads as concerned and deeply uncomfortable rather than flirtatious like Venus of Urbino. She's not flirtatious at all. So in this case, you can read it as a awkward twist of the body, turns the story into a scene of harassment and pressure. You feel that the pressure is within, is contained within the scene, but not compressing the picture plane, like engaging you, trying to engaging you, right? But the Susanna is someone who has thought, who engages within her own world. And also notice during Renaissance and Baroque art, really want to pay attention to the color too, as especially blue, red, and white. These colors get used very often. You see the red and white, and you're going to see a lot of more of the white, red, blue later in this lecture. But try to remember this. Pay attention to those colors and how the artist try to use those colors uh, to help tell the story. Okay, before getting into some of the other artworks, maybe just uh, a story for me to share with you, which is a 1612 trial that Artemisia Gentileschi involved in. While working in her father's workshop, right? There's a her father's assistant or another artist, um, and her father's friend Agostino Tazzi raped her, and Artemisia sued Tazzi, and she had to testify in court. So this this case went on for many months, if not years. It's a very the trial subjected her to testimony to torture even. So it's a very grueling, very hard experience for her. The torture involving, for example, the Sibylle, what we call the Sibylle, which is uh, you have a what do you call that finger compressor that you that the rope ties the rope to your fingers and keep adding pressure to it so that you would experience some kind of excruciating pain and so to test you, right? It's some people, my to force you to tell the truth. So that's what that device, that torture device, is for, to give you the pain and force you to tell the truth, and then that torture stops, right? Uh, so she's had to be treated with that what that kind of unhumane um, torture. And after that, after the trial, you know, Tessie was sentenced to maybe a year of prison, things like that. And then she had too much trauma, so she left Rome and went to Florence, and that's where she established her own public identity in Florence and make friends with different scientists and artists and built her own independent workshop right there as a very kind of courageous, heroic figure herself. So that's that trial. Then it's a very famous trial for Artemisia. So if you go online, you see you get a lot of detail about about uh, about Artemisia, Gentileschi, the detail of the trial, and also usually how the trial how they go about the trials. For example, some kind of torture. They involved all kinds of tortures at the time for a lot of the trials, and some of these trials might be set in public space. So that's very interesting part about the trial during the Baroque 17th century period in Europe. So she went to Florence, right? And and this is a fun fact that I recently read a scholarly article. Excuse me. Oh, sorry. It's this one. The trajectory of blood, Artemisia Gentileschi and Galileo's parabolic path. Galileo discovered the parabolic path, right? As the object, how the free fall of an object, the curve that can be calculated. Uh, Galileo discovered that. As, but eight, but these two art historians they argue that 18 years before Galileo published this theory, Artemisia Gentileschi's already applied this parabolic path in her painting. I'm going to show you later how, as a way to describe the spilling out, the spurting out of blood, of Holofernes blood. And so these two artists, what they discover is the relationship between Artemisia Gentileschi and Galileo. When Galileo was in Florence and when Artemisia Gentileschi moved to Florence, she started to be in contact with Galileo. They have exchange of letters for many years, and so they uh, kept up with the communication, and Artemisia, and absorbed a lot of the scientific viewpoints, right? Science discoveries from Galileo, and the two art historians they even argue that this painting from Gentileschi, from Artemisia Gentileschi, the allegory and inclination, the stars, the showing of stars is Gentileschi uh, showing homage, paying homage, or showing respect uh, uh, to Galileo, her dear friend, Galileo, because this, as a astrology, Galileo had discovered her own way of the constellation, the arrangement of the stars, and she put those stars, a constellation, in the back of this painting. So that's what they argue. But in Florence, she continued to thrive courageously, and she even became the first woman admitted to Florence Accademia delle Arti del Disegno. Remember, disegno is a term for Renaissance, for art, how you have to design, arrange artworks, I mean, a subject in a painting. And uh, be in the circle, right? For her, that's very important. That which most of the time exclusively are male. So she cultivated uh, Medici and literary networks, including Michelangelo's and include and Galileo, with artists and scientists. Okay. This is what we're going to focus on a lot more on, right? This is the Judith slaying Holofernes painting, the white bedsheet linen, just to show you, right? That the darkness in tenebrism used is to try to guide your attention on the movement itself, right? Composition wise. And the white linen is showing the material. So this luxurious, kind of thin, silky linen, right? Grandiose, Baroque style, but in white because it's trying to provide a platform for that beheading, the slaying to happen to show if it's in the dark, they wouldn't see it clearly, right? The body, for example, the body is all hidden in the back. So, and 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 you see the arms right here, diagonal arms, clenched fabric. So all these fabrics, right? This is Judith, right? The story is from the biblical story of Judith, the book of Judith, the biblical book of Judith. Judith as someone who, uh, when a when the Palestinian uh, came to try to invade and insult Israel, and as the only women at home realized, oh, couldn't get any help. So she decided to dress herself beautifully and attract the general, a Palestinian general, Holofernes, and Holofernes was in shock. Oh, such a beauty! So he invited her. So he invited her to his tent, and uh, then Judith used all kinds of ways to sway uh, to get to get Holofernes into drinking and get him drunk, and while he's sleeping, while he's in his sleep, this is what happened. Judith got a chance, realized the chance, and then take the opportunity to take out a sword or a dagger and slay Holofernes for Israel as a hero, as a female hero. And you see the scene, right? This scene is really compressing you, push the artist, really pushing this whole scene, just like Caravaggio's many paintings, right? All of them happening like right at the edge of the picture plane, right? This is the window between the viewer. This is imaginary glass between the viewer and the scene, and that's what we call the picture plane. Compressed, pressing it to the picture plane makes the physical even more physical. Then it's way to intensify the drama. Twisting of the body, right? You see that how making up, you see to show the power, because to show maybe Judith was not very often doing this kind of slaying thing and holding a knife like this. It takes uh, additional level, additional layer of courage. Okay, continue with that. The subject comes from the book of Judith. I said about that. The story already carries the theme of virtue, courage, and Artemisia intensifies it into a confrontation of will, flesh, and power. And this painting matters because it fuses Baroque immediacy with a startling, forceful image of female agency. Female agency to show the Baroque object. Right. Puts the Artemisia Gentileschi uh, gets women into participating in the Baroque world, right? Did you notice anything at this point? Is there anything that you noticed? For example, did you notice there's no blood spilling out? Oh, it's a little bit right here, but like gushing out of the blood in this one. But there's a lot of gushing out of blood, right? This is two paintings. And this is actually the first version that Artemisia did. And after that, and in her second edition, she edited it and added the gushing out of the blood. And this is what I was referring to as Galileo's influence, uh, the parabolic path, the blood going out from the neck, and this curve. The two, these two scholars actually measures the curve and put them in axis, X and Y axis, to just prove that it aligns with Galileo's parabolic theory. So Artemisia actually applied that theory in her depiction of the blood 18 years before Galileo finally published that theory. She's a woman of, she's incorporating a lot of women heroes in her painting. But you see here, she's also very keen to science, very aware of the science, of the intellectual, of the academia at the time. And the newest discovery, she would be the first one, right? Be eager to apply, to implement all those things in her painting. So this is art and science as one. And Artemisia is that artist and scientist as one. Here shows her wisdom, right? Which one do you like better? The first edition or the second edition? How about talk a little bit about the composition, right? It builds we talked about that diagonal lines or crossing the different diagonal lines to, you see the hands here, legs off of facing different directions to kind of give you a sense of chaos, that the movement is in action. You see the arm, the blade, and bed linen all drive our eyes towards the point of struggle. He struggles just awake, but too late that she discovered that she's being slayed and the blood's already coming out. So nothing is stable like Renaissance painting. Nothing is like Raphael's Madonna and Child. And the compressed space, right? Compressing of the space makes the viewer feel physically close to violence. The head, it's almost falling. When it falls to your feet. It will break the picture plane into your space if you are the viewer looking at this painting. That's something that involves you, right? And and with these diagonal lines, that Judith and her maid form a unified downward force, all going down, right? To press the head, to give the power, to submerge, suppress the head, suppress the male power. So and Holofernes twists and try to resist with his arms, twist, but the composition tells us that the balance of power is already changed. It's not the other way around. It's not the male on top and female and so passively lying on the bed. It's subverted. That male dominated perspective is subverted. And in this case, that male dominated perspective is visually subverted. Tense veins, you see, Judas and rolling up of the sleeves, rolling up of the sleeves just adds to another layer of intensity uh, to that, right? That women is at work. Women is not just decorative. They can be, they can participate, they can make history. So they're not passive. And even the maid is not passive, but a collaborator whose weight and grip help control the victim, in this case, Holofernes. Blood is not symbolic of decoration, it appears with shocking material force. Right? The blood's a little bit exaggerated, right? This blood coming out. And you notice this one rolling up the sleeves, right? This is a very famous poster, propaganda poster during the World War II that we can do it. Women take up the labor during the World War II because of labor shortage. And this poster also put women at work, rolling up the sleeve. That's what I mean by sleeves practical. Sleeves very practical in action to help trans to help translate a woman, a figure from a relatively passive position into proactive working position. And you see a lot in history, poster or painting, the rolling up the sleeves. You can pay attention to that. What's that visual element? What's that visual language? Try to try to convey to you. Red blood, and white linen to set the platform. And a little bit of Caravaggio, if I may echo, which shows that this scene is staged. The deep red, the color, in this case, deep red, white, and flesh, the flesh tones heighten danger and bodily reality. The white sheet, I keep referring to this one as becomes a visual stage, sets a platform where the balance is exposed with almost unbearable clarity here. Otherwise, everything sinks in the darkness. So you have the darkness here to generate the light and dark contrast here, the tenebrism, but also you have a white linen to set the stage. And there are some other iterations because um, Artemisia in her lifetime returned to this subject again and again, and this and depict all different moments of this story of Judith and Holofernes' story. This is after the slaying that Judith and Holofernes, and that Judith and her maid holding the head of Holofernes. She also depicted many other moments of that of this story, and why? Well, you know, one interpretation has some would interpret it could maybe a revenge for Artemisia to Tatsi, the one who raped her in the studio, in her father's studio. And she's using painting as a kind of weapon to subvert that, to express her anger, to pay the revenge to Tassi. Okay, then we can talk about a little bit about the self-fashioning. As I mentioned at the very beginning, um, Artemisia painted a lot of self-portrait and a lot of self-portrait uh, fashioning herself as female hero. For example, the female martyr, you can see this palm leaf pen, it has a symbol of a female martyr. Saint Catherine, it's a female hero, or La Putura, uh, again, the light cast on her face to try to accentuate her presence in the painting. These are, and and who are these women? And these women are, some of them are victims under threat, women who act, and saints or martyrs, allegorical selves. These are just she's using painting to to establish or re-establish herself as an individual, as some kind of heroic presence, female heroic presence. Painting as a way to share her feeling, to express herself, to show that heroism is collaborative, is physical, is unsentimental, that women can take the front stage but not receive to the back as some kind of an object to be objectified by the male-dominated society. And this is another example of the female Artemisia painting a female. And this is her late works. And if you're interested in it, you can compare this painting to Caravaggio's painting of this exactly the same topic, the same subject. The body here, the body reclines, but the image is not inert. The face turns upward, caught between the flesh and the revelation. Some kind of summary of Artemisia, how to recognize Artemisia, and a bit of the career geography for you in Rome, how he how she built worked in her father's studio, and then later, participated in that painful trial, and later moved to Florence and became a success, independent success. That's a miracle through her uh, through first of all her talent, her painting, her professionalism, and contact with Medici family or scientists, artists at the time to be able to build her own network. So the rape and revenge, right? So because one conjecture that I share with you was about Judith and Holofernes is, oh, she might just use this pain. Why she return to this subject again and again? Oh, maybe she just use this kind of painting, this subject as a way as a way of revenge to that Tessie's tragic rape of her. Uh, but but that's in a older public story, right? But we can also understand it in a more feminist way. A more useful framing could be Artemisia as a major Baroque painter with unusual but not singular life circumstances, and this is the image that understood through style, market, workshop practice, and theology as well as biography. Feminist interest becomes richer when it takes the art seriously as art. So it could be presented as a feminist proclamation through art, not just a very personal, kind of therapeutic act of her own trauma. So there are different kind of point of view here to kind of broaden our vision about how to look at art, and specifically how to look at Gentileschi's art. And she's already gained a lot of fame and be able to establish her independent workshop in Florence in while she's alive, right? So this rediscovery of Artemisia gives uh, shows that the Baroque style gives Artemisia the language of force, but Artemisia uses the language to make female power visible. So it's a two-way conduit in this case, or Baroque and Artemisia. And that's why we talk about this subject. That's why we talk about Artemisia here. A little bit of the discussion questions uh, to share with you how to think about this case. Some takeaways. And there you have it, Artemisia Gentileschi and the Baroque style.